Our guest today in this IPI Global Observatory interview series with candidates vying to become the next Secretary General of the United Nations is Christiana Figueres, the former Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. I'm going to be asking Ms. Figueres the same 4 questions that we are putting to the other candidates for Secretary General whom we are interviewing for the Global Observatory. We have shared these questions with her in advance, as we have with all the interviewees. First,
very impartial, very fair, and very transparent. Congratulations.
That's why we're doing all those things. First, the United Nations Charter describes the Secretary General as the, quote, chief administrative officer of the organization, unquote, and the person who can call the attention of the Security Council to matters the Secretary General believes may threaten international peace and security. But the job has evolved into something much more than that. A mix of global diplomacy and oversight of the UN's Executive Office, serving the 3 pillars of the organization: human rights, peace and security, and development. How would you shape the job and define your priorities for the office?
Well, first of all, thanks very much, Warren. Really appreciate the opportunity. So I think the next Secretary General has a very important challenge here of not just respecting those 3 original pillars and ensuring that we work deeper into our progress with them, but actually interlinking them. So I think the strength of the UN originally in the last century was the identification of those 3 pillars. The strength and the agency of the United Nations in this century is how do we bring them together? Because there is no doubt that our further understanding now has led us to the conclusion that these are mutually reinforcing pillars, either negatively or positively. So I think that's the second challenge. It's not just interlinking them, it's interlinking them in a very specific, intentional direction of travel, which is toward the betterment of mankind. And that is for me, the challenge and the huge opportunity of the next Secretary General, to be able to mobilize collective political will to be able to intertwine the 3 pillars in the direction of travel that is a positive one.
The second question is, can you discuss aspects of your background and professional career that manifest, number 1, proven leadership, managerial abilities, and strategic vision; number 2, extensive experience in international relations and multilateral diplomacy; and number 3, strong global communication skills?
Well, rather easy for me. Rather easy for me because I've had the immense honor and privilege of supporting not just 193 member states here, but 196 that we have in the Climate Convention toward the most successful agreement of the history of the United Nations. And I will remind you, Warren, that I took over that process just 6 months after Copenhagen, when it was absolutely in the dumps, in the trash can. Nobody thought an agreement would ever be possible. There was no trust among the member states. There was no trust in the Secretariat. The Secretariat was completely demoralized, on and on and on and on. Not unlike what we have now in New York. And over 6 years, because it's a process of love and patience and a lot of very hard work, but we were able to pick that process up from where it was and take it all the way to the delivery of a universal, unanimous, ambitious, futuristic, and legally binding agreement. I don't know what is better proof of multilateral ability, and backed up by a secretariat that I inherited, which, as I say, was understandably very demoralized, and over 6 years has grown to be a top-performing organization.
The third question is, the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement afford the UN an opportunity to move forward under the most comprehensive Sustainable Development Agenda in its history. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, known as the SDGs, have universal application to all countries from north to south. They integrate the 3 fundamental aspects of development: economic, social, and environmental, and they include issues that were once outside the scope of development, particularly peace and climate change. How do you see the Secretary General's role in promoting and prioritizing this overall agenda?
It's absolutely key because I have very clearly said publicly and can repeat today that these are not separate agendas. The fundamental target, the fundamental objective of the United Nations is peace, universal international peace. How we get there and what we do in those cases in which we have lost peace is the challenge of the United Nations. But one of the threats to not having peace tomorrow is, or would be, if we are blind to the urgency of implementation of the SDGs and climate targets, because that would put such an enormous environmental, social, political, and economic pressure on such a large population that we would have a tinderbox there. So it is absolutely clear that the SDGs and climate are not just development issues. They're not just environmental challenges. That is actually the garden in which we must seed peace tomorrow. But we have to do it today. We can't wait until 2030 to begin this. We have to start it right now, because otherwise we will not be able to harvest that fruit tomorrow. It's like if you want to harvest some fruit tomorrow, you plant today. You don't wait to harvest the fruit if you're not planting. And it's the same thing. It's exactly the same concept. We have to plant it today, and it has to be part of the priority and has to be understood not as a luxury, but actually as an urgency in our insurance for peace.
And now, finally, an open question. Is there something you would like to elaborate on or emphasize in outlining your thoughts on the job of United Nations Secretary General and its possibilities?
I think I would add that I personally think that it is important for any Secretary General to have a moral compass. Whatever that may be, and each one of us certainly has a choice about what that moral compass is. But if we don't have a moral compass, then we are open to winds that come at the United Nations from all kinds of directions. And the moral compass needs to give us guidance that provides the direction of travel independently of the many different changing winds. My personal moral compass has always been the protection of the most vulnerable, the improvement of the quality of life of the most marginalized, the politically isolated, because it is they who are disproportionately negatively affected and who don't have a voice on their own. And that is something that I have inherited from my parents, and that I actually am very proud to say I have actually passed on to my own daughters. So it's a good family tradition, and will always be my weather vane and my direction.
Christiana Figueres, thank you very much for talking to the Global Observatory.
Thank you very much.